Hello, and welcome to a garden tour with me and Lady Ignore. The t-shirt, okay, I didn't expect to be filmed from behind today, but we're gonna do a cute and cozy little February garden tour. I've never done one of these. We're gonna start with, I think, the worst part, and hopefully it'll get progressively better. This is my side yard. There's a lot going on here, and I don't want to make this video too long, but long story short, there's not much growing here. I do have a few things, but I'm hoping to grow maybe like wheat or sunflowers. Last year I had huge cosmos here. This is where I have my hose and like my side area. I'm not sure the sunlight that this area gets. The plants that I grew are supposed to love and need sun, and they thrived. So the one plant I do have is this really sad looking hebe plant. It's a shrub that's supposed to get 3 to 4 feet. I just planted this a few months ago, and I also have some New England asters that I got from plugs, I want to say like almost 3 years ago, and they are thriving. They did so good here. Towards the back it was a little bit more shady, but this is sort of where I've been dumping a lot of organic material. This area is heavy. Like, I don't even want to say clay. It's like a brick underneath. There's no water penetrating. So I've been building up these beds for the past year, and this area needs a lot of tidying up. So this is the ugliest part of my garden, and now we're going to move on to the more aesthetic parts. So if you're new here, stick around. I'll show you the rest of my garden. This is my lilac, and it's one of the only like really big shrubs that I have. It's a New England or New Age white lilac. I really love plants that are not the normal color. This is Lady. She's my garden companion, and we sort of get, once we come around the corner to my main garden area, this is where I have a lot of my cutting flowers in these beds. I still have some stumps of celosia left from last year, and I think I got lucky last year with the soil. I didn't add any special soil. I just sort of used the soil I had. And so I'm going to need to do a lot of like adding and amending, I think, this year. The bed on the right with the mulch that I have is already sort of planted up. I direct seeded some bupleurum, and I also have some bachelor's buttons in there. And then along the back line, it's kind of hard to see, but I have a little trellis. I've been planting up my sweet peas. So if you've been following along, you've seen me do that. So I've started my sweet peas. They're looking good. I think I'm going to need to pinch them soon, but I'm kind of hoping that the cold weather will sort of do that for me. But this is where I had a ton of celosia. I also had some of my seed dahlias that were from the Florette Bee's Choice. If you have a cat, you know how they love to get in the way, but this is one of my little bachelor's buttons. I love blue flowers, so I'm obsessed with my bachelor's buttons. And last year I grew probably way too many, so this year I'm definitely cutting back on the amount that I'm growing. But the sweet peas that I'm growing are a Prince Orange. Last year I had mixed results with sweet peas. It was my first year growing them, so this year I'm hoping to do a little bit better. I think I got them out in my garden about a month earlier, which is good. So along this side neighboring sharing piece of my garden is my white and yellow garden. This is sort of the color vibe. This is sort of the scheme that we're going for, if that makes sense. These aren't flowers that I grew in this garden, but this is like the color scheme. I have talked about my great shame with this garden, and that is my laurels that I may or may not have killed, but we'll see if they come back this spring. I have 2 bactesias that are like, one is pink lemonade and one is vanilla cream, so they're like yellowish, pinky, creamy. I also have a rosemary and a thornless blackberry. And I also planted in here some sweet williams. You might see the little green dots on the snow, and that's what those are. I really like this view of my garden. I've been narrowing my pathways, and I think as in theory a hedge forms along the left side of this garden, I will narrow this pathway quite a bit. But I'm currently dealing with some erosion problems. My entire garden is on a pretty steep slope, so that was one of the gardening challenges that I had when building my garden, is like, how do I deal with the slope? But in these 3 little square beds are a mixture of a lot of different things. This is a continuation of my yellow and white garden. I have a lot of my perennials like feverfew, achillea, or yarrow. I also have some bearded irises that I acquired last year. So I'm very excited. I think the ones in this bed, you could kind of see the 3 of them are called Friendly Advice. And I have some Shasta daisies, and I have a raspberry here, which I kind of want to just go wild and be like a living hedge because I love the birds and I want them to have a little habitat. This weird structure is a honeysuckle that I got last year. I live in an area where we have pretty invasive honeysuckles, so I got a native one, and this is the Friendly Advice bearded iris that I got from Shriners, I believe. I have 3 of them. I also have some penstemons, and this unruly bush is my buddleia, my butterfly bush. It's the honeycomb buddleia, so it is a like golden yellow color to fit in with like the yellow and white theme of the garden. And across the way, we have some of my first vegetable beds. They're very small because I am one person, so I don't need a ton of growing space. And these are some of the first beds that I actually set up. So in the foreground here, we have like 2 little squares. One of them has my garlic, which in the very first video I posted, we planted the garlic in this bed, which is actually starting to come up. This garlic I started in late December, and with the fluctuating temperatures, I think it started coming up. And in this little bed, we have broccoli in the middle and then 2 little cilantros. One of the main features of my garden are the bricks, which you are really going to start to see as we go through the rest of the garden. Some of them are falling apart, but the best part about these bricks is that they were free. So most of my garden, everything you're seeing, like the structure, I didn't pay for at all. Like I've just used materials that I had from my house renovations. So in all of these beds, like this one we're looking at, all the bricks are from an old chimney that we took down. This is sort of one of my other perennial areas. I have a limelight hydrangea. That was the first thing I got for my garden. I didn't know anything about gardening at all, but I found out what a limelight hydrangea was somehow, and I was obsessed. Like I love the limey green chartreuse color, so I had to have one, and my mom got one, and in wintertime when it was just sticks like this, and she was like, are you sure you want to pay $50 for this? And I was like, yes, Mom, please get it. So I have a few things growing in here, including some tulips that you just saw. Those are Queen Stay tulips. So this garden theme is more like purples and oranges and salmons. So I'll go through more detail of what I have growing when things start to bloom, because to be honest, I kind of forgot, so I'm not really sure. In these perennial beds, I have just a mixture of things like salvias, Russian sage, some of those like stereotypical generic like bluey purple scabiosas that you get like in early spring at Lowe's. I'm obsessed with the blue colors, so I had to have them. But once we get past this area, this is what was initially supposed to be my main cutting garden, but it also gets shade all summer. So I've had to readjust and reevaluate what I put in this garden that we're looking at now. But as you can kind of see, I have that really big slope that I'm sort of dealing with. So I've had to build up these beds. Again, most of the soil in these beds was from excavating the the terraces, I guess you could say, to build up the garden. I do have one singular rose. It's a Roald Dahl David Austin rose, and I got this rose because it reminds me of my mom. She's not dead, but it just reminds me of her because she's been on a kick about banned books and reading childhood popular books, and a lot of them were written by Roald Dahl, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, BFG, Matilda. So as soon as I went on their website and I saw the Roald Dahl rose, I was like, immediately, I need this. And it's right next to my snapdragon bed where I'm overwintering quite a few snapdragons. And this is sort of where I had some camera malfunctions. I didn't think about like, oh, when it's snowing, my camera will get wet. So bear with me on the focusing here. But these 2 beds, I actually just had an idea as I was editing this video. I think I might make it just like lettuce, because lettuce will get the sun in the early spring, late winter, and then shade once it starts getting hot. So we'll see. I have a few things in here like leeks, some broccoli, dill. The leeks here are actually from last year, so I'm kind of hoping they flower because I want to see what that looks like. And then in the beginning of this like cut flower vegetable area is another bed that has been through quite a lot of iterations. It has been through so many different changes, but this year I basically took half of it out. It used to be the same height as the other beds, but I took it down halfway, used the soil in other places, and moved the plants that I had, because this is an area that does actually get sun. So kind of prime growing space. I have 3 other Shriners bearded irises. These are the mimosas, which I might move eventually to be in the yellow and white garden, but this is where I have them now. You can see some snapdragons popping around in the base, and also this is where I put my reject tulips. I'm doing a little bit of a tulip experiment, so the reject ones that I didn't feel super confident about, I just put in this bed, and some of them are starting to come up. I think the ones that are coming up are the pre-chilled tulips. Then past this bed, we sort of get to no man's land. This is my little experimental landscape. If you've been following and subscribed and watching my videos, you'll know what these are kind of. I have some tulip experiments, some sweet peas with tulips, and also some native plants that I'm winter sowing. I also attempted a wattle fence, which I need to replace the plastic with sticks, but I wanted to see if I liked the look of it. This is one of my favorite views of my garden, especially in the summer when things are growing. And just imagine it with like a hedge all along the back, greenery all along the house, and just kind of covered in like this border of green. I think it's going to look very cozy and nice. Finally, up at the top area, I've also been working on this as well. You can see on the right, that's sort of the direction I want to go, and the left is the old direction. In these pots are actually a ton of peonies that I wanted to pot up before we got a bunch of snow. So that's really it, short and sweet. There's not much growing, but I feel like I have potential, and I know it's dinky and like rough around the edges, but this is like a real garden from someone who's just like learning as she goes. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I have also the lot next to my house that I bought last June that needs to be cleared and all of that stuff. And I keep saying that because I keep putting it off and putting it off, because look at this pile. I mean, I'm just one girl. Look at this. Hopefully my tours in the future will not only include the garden that I have now, but also the lot next door and what I'm doing there. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see how this garden changes throughout the year, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.